the real reason why people are watching us is not because of us. It's because of Coach Tommy Moffitt in studio, which he complimented our new studio here at Cars and Culture.
Beautiful.
You love it. We can get you. Maybe we'll get you here. We'll get you here a lot more.
Well, I don't mind coming on here, but I need this for my podcast studio.
See, like I've seen that look on his face.
Fit in your room.
I've seen that look on his face so many times that I could just see the wheels just going. Like he's cooking already. Right
when he doesn't say anything, he's just kind of looking. He's
so I'm a big fan of David LaSavio. So So having his art surrounded by his work and everything else that Anthony's got going on here, this is a cool place.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's a really cool spot, and we're very, very fortunate. Anthony gave us the opportunity to work here with him. I know he's excited. We obviously go way back, but this has been great for us. We've enjoyed it, and so we're looking forward to growing within this studio or this building. But before we get going, before I ask you all these questions about football, I want you to, everybody knows you for being the strength coach here at LSU. You're here since 2000. You did. I mean, the results on the field speak for themselves. The guys you've coached, the guys you've developed, and the guys that you still have a relationship with speak for itself. You're obviously no longer here at LSU, but you're still very much in the mix of the training scene. Can you explain to everybody what's going on, what you're doing? Explain to them what the Moffitt Method is. If it's anything like we had to experience at LSU, I feel sorry for everybody that has to work out with you, but can you please explain that?
them stripes ain't changing. Let's be honest.
Him screaming at our faces.
So now that we're on that topic, this guy, I was talking to a high school coach, and he said, well, we don't want to do this, we don't want to do that, we can't do this, we can't do that. And I said, well, it's not the Moffitt Method.
I can't help you, Coach.
Yeah, I can't. I can't make it easy.
Right.
We can make it effective, all right? We can make it progressive, and, there's a lot of stuff that we can do, but I can't make it easy, or it wouldn't be called the Moffitt Method. So my initial goal was to do a podcast. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to and consult with university and professional teams. So that was my ultimate goal once I got the news that I was being let go. So I started working on that, and then the Moffitt Method training kind of grew out of that. Based on the people that I was talking to. Everyone that I talked to said, you need to do this, you need to do that. You can't, you don't need to be sitting on the sideline, you need to be coaching people, etc. So I talked to people about a brick and mortar facility, and that was right at the end of the COVID pandemic, and building prices were through the roof. 2x4s were 3 times what they were. So that was kind of out of the question. So we started looking at developing a remote coaching program that we could deliver via an app, and then support that training with nationally certified strength and conditioning coaches. And our goal has never been to replace anyone at a high school or junior college or collegiate team. Our goal was to help assist those coaches take the programming off their hands, develop the program, whether it's weightlifting or sprinting or both, and then using an app, deliver that product to the school so the coaches can still work on game plans. Some coaches have 2 or 3 different classes that they're prepping for. They've got a life of their own. They got kids at home. So our goal is to take the programming off their hands. We deliver it via an app. We didn't build the app. We just took a third-party app. It's called Team Builder. Probably the number one product in its market in the country. They have over 150,000 clients in addition to us. So they've done this, and they do a good job at it. So we do all the programming. When we have a school call us, we do an onboarding process. We talk about how much time they have, what type of equipment they have, how many athletes are going to be training, what time of the day, how often during the day. And then we devise a program for that school. And then we assign a coach to it that is available to talk to those staff members throughout the day. So it's been great. We do 5 a.m. email. So every day, this would be good for you. So every day of the week, or every day that you train, you get a 5 a.m. email reminder. So you know how guys wake up in the morning, first thing they do is look at their phone. There's a notification right there. You got an email from the Moffitt Method, and then you open it, and it tells you everything that you're supposed to do for that day. Every set, every rep, how much weight's on the bar. And then when you go in the weight room, you have tablets with the program on it. Everything is on your cell phone. There's printable versions. And now we're doing that for one-on-one clients also. So we're taking on young men. Today we picked up an 11-year-old softball player from North Carolina. We talked to a 42-year-old active duty serviceman in the U.S. Army. He's an ordnance, so he's a bomb tech. Wow. You know, I thought that was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
We talked to a softball organization. We talked to a place called DBAT Academy. Mm-hmm. Y'all heard of DBAT Academy? Real big in baseball.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, we train everybody from individuals to high schools to junior colleges, Division II, Division III schools, to 11-year-old softball players. Anybody that wants training, we're here for.
It's not just for athletes.
Right.
No, absolutely not. Look at me.
You're an athlete. You're there.
He's been doing this thing forever. So I got a question. I mean, like, this is jumping into this side of it, out of being out of high school and college ball for so long, right? And now you're touching a wide range of people, a wide range of athletes. Doing it this way and being able to, like I said, touch different ages and different sports and all kind of stuff and be hands-on in those situations, basically. Have you seen a difference in, like you said, we talked about it briefly, when you have different coaches, different teams, different philosophies, what they want, what they don't want, how much they don't want, and you devise a plan for what they want. Have you seen any correlation to what it is that successful teams do in these situations and what teams that are kind of faltering or not doing?
Yeah, so successful teams, the entire coaches, well, it starts at the administration, the athletic directors, the principals, every head coach is dialed in from top to bottom. The schools that, like if I call a school, if I talk to a football coach and the football coach says my AD wants you to call, and I call the AD 3 or 4 times, and the AD doesn't return my call, they're not buying.
Right.
You know, and then the coach was like, man, I thought this was going to be great for us. But whether it's the athletic director for the parish or the county, you know, I've been cold called by athletic directors that said, you know, we've had 3 different schools from my district call us about the Moffitt Method. Can you come talk to us about our entire county? Yeah. So yes, absolutely. And then it trickles down. So, so the way the program works is, and it's simple. First of all, Team Builder is a free app. So when we're onboarding a school, we have every player's email address. So on our end, it's just like a entry form for anything. When you're signing up for something. We put the athlete's name, his position, his height, weight, his age, and then his email address. So on the other end, we tell the coaches to have a team meeting, tell every kid to bring their phone. Then they come in the meeting. The coach has a photo of what the app looks like. You know, you got to make it simple for kids sometimes. And then you say, go online, download the free app. And then we have a 4-digit access code. And then all the player has to do is enter that access code, bam. His workout is updated, whether it's 1 week or 52 weeks. We have some programs that are templated that is 52 weeks. From the day you sign on, you have 52 weeks of programming. Now, that's not a custom program, right, but it's still a heck of a program. So anyway, so once the kid enters that 4-digit code, he's automatically logged into the program. And from that day on, everywhere he goes, the Moffitt Method goes with him. Doesn't matter. All right, we have problems sometimes getting the coach to buy in enough that he'll allow his players to download that app on their cell phone. So what they do is they take our program, they look at it on his cell phone, and then he writes it on a white marker board. And that's okay. But then you take the customization process of the app away, and the app has got all types of analytics on it. It's got leaderboards. So if you're in first period, all right, you're the starting quarterback at STM, and you work out in first period, okay? So you set a PR in one of your lifts, like squat, you know? And then the backup quarterback is in class or between classes. He looks at that live leaderboard. He sees Mikie Mahtook just set a 10-pound PR in back squat. What do you think the backup quarterback's thinking about the second, third, and fourth period? And, you know, and players can make their own leaderboards. They can take all of our testing, broad jump, vertical jump, 10, 20, 40-yard splits, endurance, timing. They can take all that information and make their own leaderboards. I mean, it's just, you know how kids are on cell phones.
Right.
So players can see where they rank on their team against all of the players. I mean, there's so much in the app, and we have trouble getting coaches to even do that part of it. And the price, the app and the price of the program is, like, as a young coach, I would have loved to have Team Builder just for the price of the Moffitt Method. It's worth every cent of it. And then you get the training in addition to that. So yes, there is a big difference in successful programs and unsuccessful programs.
So if you're interested, right, if you're an athlete, if you're a school, if you're just a normal person who just wants to get in shape, how do they look into this? How do they find it? How do they get in touch with you? How do they do
this? So there's a couple ways. The easiest way is to go to the MoffittMethod.fit email address, www.themoffittmethod.fit. Okay, go there, and there's a form that you fill out, and someone will contact you. And a lot of times it's me. If I'm not busy, I called a coach today, and we ended up talking for like 30 or 40 minutes. Great.
You talked for that long? No way, huh?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I get fired up, man. Wait,
when you started your podcast and you said, "Hey, it's gonna be an hour," I said, "I don't know," and then he said, "I can't get it to an hour."
I shot one last night for 2 hours. I shot a podcast last night for 2 hours.
You probably didn't get all of it in either. You probably had more.
Heck no.
That's light work, dude.
Yeah. And you can email us at info@themoffittmethod.fit. So info@themoffittmethod.fit. You can DM us on Instagram. You name it. It's out there.
And they're more than likely going to speak to you at some point if you have the ability.
Absolutely.
To. Yep.
Absolutely.
That's great. I mean, I think this is a huge thing. Like for me, you know, obviously at STM, you know, you had a weight room, you had a guy who kind of knew what he was talking about as far as strength coach goes, but you know, nobody has the expertise that you have. So to be able to get a college strength coach to be able to at their fingertips is unbelievable.
So there are schools that have 600 competitive athletes.
Yeah.
All right. And then you have one strength coach in there that's programming for all those sports. I've done that for my entire life. That's next to impossible, especially like Tommy Moffitt, the 24-year-old Tommy Moffitt compared to the, I don't know, how old am I now? 60-year-old Tommy Moffitt. They're two completely different coaches. And that's all we want to do. We don't want to replace anybody. If the old line and here's the thing. All right, let's say you're at STM, and I know y'all have your own strength coach, but let's say you're at STM or New Iberia Senior High. Let's say you're there, and the offensive line coach is the strength coach.
Right.
And he does a great job, and everybody's getting bigger and faster and stronger. And then he takes a job at Karen Crow or wherever, Lafayette Christian,
Lafayette Christian,
or someplace like that.
Yeah.
There goes your strength program. It's out the window. And now the coach not only has to go out and find a position coach and a math teacher and a science teacher, but he's also got to find somebody that knows a little bit about the weight room. But when you're with us, that never happens.
Right.
And then when the head coach, if he leaves, our program is still there. In fact, we have a school here in the state that we picked up because the head football coach left right at the beginning of the summer program, and he ran the weight room, and they called us, and they're up and running. Now they got a new head coach, and they're still using the Moffitt Method.
But and we can also add to that, like, let's be honest, the 24-year-old Tommy Moffitt was trying to knock on and find whatever 50-year-old pro that's done this to be able to, hey, how can I get better? I know a pretty good amount of this, but you obviously know more. You've been around this longer. Yeah. Even those guys that are doing well at it, reach out to someone who's been an expert in this for a while.
So I had a guy drive 7 hours today to come talk to me, and we sat at the house for 3 hours today and talked training. He's a high school strength coach. He drove 7 hours to come here and talk to me today. Got in his car and drove right back.
Wow.
Boy.
That's impressive.
Dedicated.
That's impressive.
That's dedicated, man, because he wants to get better. Ask Miss Jill, next time y'all see Jill, ask her, because every time we went on vacation, even our honeymoon to Knoxville was centered around meeting with collegiate strength coaches.
Wow.
And our vacations, I'd say, oh, let's go here. And she'd say, all right, what college is on the way?
That's a special woman because she just knows it's part of the program at this point.
She's on board. She's a part of the program, no doubt. Speaking of dedication, right? Football is not easy. You've got to be dedicated. You've got to be disciplined. It's going to be hard. You're going to have to go through some of some rough patches in football. You have to get knocked down, got to get back up, all of that kind of stuff, right? Through the course of your career as a coach, as a strength coach, being on the field, being in the middle of battle with all these guys, I'm sure you've gone through some of the stretches, similar stretches to what's kind of happening right now on the field, right? Like defensively, we've talked about this on the show a lot. Defensively, a lot of the effort and the want to and some of the stuff happens because of just pure determination and effort. Like you can mess up on your assignment, but if you're going 100 miles an hour and you're going full speed, you can kind of make up for some of those things, right? In situations that you're seeing that happened last week where you're giving up a bunch of yards and you just things seem to be a little bit discombobulated on the defensive side. How have you in the past rectified that, fixed that, remedied that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, and anybody that knows me, that has worked for me, knows that I'm a big, procedural person. Like, I always really tried hard to have procedures and systems and rules in place to prevent these types of things from ever happening. So that's the first thing. You know, there's so much data and analytics now, and college teams practice a lot more, and that's a little side note. We'll talk about that in a second. But there's a lot more practice that goes on now too. So the key, in my opinion, and this is the way I operated, is to have systems in place, and everyone in my department, you had a responsibility, and you followed that to the T. That's because you want to eliminate those issues before they ever become a problem. So that's number one, and big procedural guy. So when you do have a breakdown, well, let me back up. Let me say this. This is what I wanted to say. There's more practice now, and I think this was an issue with us in 2020 and 2021 because the rules have changed a lot now. So you used to not be able to practice at all, really. Right. Players could have player-led 7-on-7s. Right. And I remember, this is no kidding. So I've kept a copy. I'm a big journaler, and if you journal a lot, you can prevent these issues from happening also. One of my mentors says you can have 20 years worth of experience once in your life and it lasts a lifetime, or you can keep having that same experience over and over and over again. The choice is yours. And he was from the country. He would say how many times he had to be slapped upside the head with a dead squirrel to understand that you're making mistakes. All right, great guy, Johnny Parker, longtime NFL strength coach. So great man.
I can tell you, I've never been slapped aside the head with a dead squirrel
Yeah,
in my life.
yeah.
But
He was.
It only take me one time.
Yeah,
I can tell you that right now.
I think and Coach Parker, I'll probably get this wrong, but he's from like Pearl, Mississippi or somewhere. Great man, great strength coach. So nowadays, teams practice all the time, okay? And you don't have any pads on, you don't have helmets on. And I really think that this is a serious issue. It's like taking BP all the time without seeing live pitches and then going right into a game and expecting to be able to hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball.
Right.
That ball's coming at you now.
Yeah.
Or fielding ground balls, just
From
going
a
out there
yeah.
every day and flipping it around and, doing PFPs and, flipping it around and never seeing live hitting and making live plays. Well, in football, if you go out and let me go back up to Peyton now. Peyton Manning, I looked at a lot of the stuff that we did at Tennessee. We'd have 4 or 5 receivers and maybe 2 DBs come to practice. And, that offense was near perfect, okay? Flawless. And then when you played, we didn't practice, we did 7-on-7. So nowadays, teams are able to go out and practice, and it's full go. It's team, and the balls are flying around, and it's the only difference in what you're able to do now, beginning in January all the way to August. The only difference in that in training camp is you don't have pads on. So I think because there's a lot of tagging off. So if Jared catches the ball, he's playing wide receiver, the defensive back just comes and like they play patty cake. Offensive and defensive linemen are playing patty cake. And I think it gives you an unrealistic, and especially if you do a lot of it, right, it gives you an unrealistic expectation of what your effort and what your technique is. So mistakes that occur in the game, they're either technical, tactical, perceptual. Okay, I can't even see what's going on. Physical, I'm not fast enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not flexible enough, or I'm just not athletic enough. And then last, they're effort-based. And when you're out there practicing as much as college teams do now, I think, again, it's an unrealistic picture of what happens in the game. And then you go into training camp and it's 3 weeks, and then you're at week 0, and then you have to play the game. So I think that's where some of these issues come from, okay? And it happens slowly over time, and unless you have these, and I'm going to use the word rigid because people that know me and my coaching style and my program, it was a little rigid at times. But you got to have these systemic processes that are rigid in how you apply the methods so that these things don't sneak up on you. And they happen, it's just like, the Grand Canyon started with a drip of water, and then over time, you have the Grand Canyon, and it only takes a little bit to erode techniques. So, first thing you do, I think, and this is what we would do, like a procedure like for weight gain, all right? So so he knows the first thing that when you came in the weight room, number 1, you had to be dressed right, okay? Number 2, you had to weigh in. And if you didn't weigh in, you didn't work out that day. So we check roll.
When he says dress right, too, he legit means dress right.
Oh, no.
Don't show up with half the outfit in your hand or you're going home.
Right.
Show up with it on. Right?
Yeah.
Because you'd be surprised at how many people do that.
Yeah, walk in with their shoes in their hand, no socks on, shirt over the top of their head.
2 minutes before you're supposed to
Yeah,
start.
2 minutes before you're supposed to start. You don't even have your clothes on. Where's your brain? Seriously. How committed are you to what we're fixing to do if you don't even have your clothes on yet? Like, what have you been doing for the and so be on time, So, and then you weigh in. So we automatically targeted, we would know, because guys can gain weight, especially an offensive lineman, can gain 3 pounds a day if unchecked. So if I weigh a guy on Monday and I don't weigh him till Wednesday, that kid's gained 9 pounds. In a week's time, he'll gain 15 pounds if they go unchecked, It's that simple. So then if a guy's overweight, then you immediately, there's a system then that would kick in. He's got extra this or extra that, and then we're going to go watch what he eats, or there's someone that is responsible nowadays with nutritionists, and then you got to make sure that they're watching player X to make sure he's not overeating and consuming the right things. So those are kind of the systematic processes that you put in place. So when one of those things go bad, the first you have to recognize it.
Yeah.
And then you can't stick in your head in the sand and think that it's going to go away like a bad cold, because they don't. Mm-hmm. And so then, when you see the issue, you confront it with the staff. I mean, because, you coach them up on the sidelines, you coach them up. Half times are chaotic at the very least, because everything happens so quick.
Well, I think that's what some people forget. Like, they think, oh, you're going to go into halftime, you're going to make these adjustments. Yeah, adjustments are there, but you have 20 minutes.
Yeah.
No,
you have 15.
15 minutes.
And you don't have individual rooms either.
Right.
So it's 5 different voices to 5 different groups of people.
The adjustments have to be quick and right.
Yeah, but plus you don't even have 15 minutes, because the first thing because you're telling everybody to hydrate, the 2 days in advance. So the first thing that everybody does at halftime is everybody runs to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Everybody takes a leak. Then 90% of the guys, and then my staff and the nutrition staff and the sports medicine staff, we're handing out fluids, we're handing out food. You're doing all of that. And then the coaches, this is no kidding. The coaches, you have the offensive staff in one end of the shower, and you have the defensive staff in the other end of the shower. Some of these places, like at Vanderbilt, the Vanderbilt locker room.
Oh, they're working on it.
Yeah, the Vanderbilt locker room is like this big.
Yeah.
And so you got coaches in this little nook, and they've got a marker board, and they're going over it, and then the head coach comes, because the head coach has got notes that he's looking at. And then he'll go in the defensive room, and then he'll go in the offensive room. And then those coaches run out. Mm-hmm. All right. And so all this is going on. So the coach might get 5 minutes with those guys. All right. And remember, it's technical, tactical, perceptual. The guy knows, but he just can't see what's going on. It's happening so quick, or he can't process it quick enough. And then it's physical. It's way too late if it's physical.
Yeah.
It's over.
It's over.
And then
effort, right?
Effort, and sometimes you can correct that. And then a lot of times, some of this stuff, like I remember listening to the Saints head coach on Sunday after the game. I was, working in the yard, and I'm listening to the radio in my shed. And he's talking, he kept saying, they kept asking these questions, and he said, wait until I look at the film. I want to look at the film, because a lot of times, if you're not getting the right information down from the press box, when you go in there at halftime, that's some analyst, some 23-year-old guy, or some guy that's telling you what he's seeing, and then you get and look at the film, it's not even what you thought you were seeing.
Right? Yeah.
So it's chaotic, to say the least. Right?
Yeah,
right.
No, there's a lot going on, especially at halftime in situations where it's, like you said, you only got 5 minutes, but, think of pregame, right, where you're sitting in a situation in pregame and everyone's got their own headphones in. Yeah. Everyone's locked into what's been going on for the past week about this situation that you're about to get into. Well, now we're trying to change up and correct things in a 5-minute span where nobody's got headphones on. There's 3 more groups talking. It's all loud. People are screaming out there. You're worried about the play you just missed or with the play you just made. There's a lot going on.
Yep.
And then I'm screaming times, because I had the countdown clock. So, and then at 5 minutes, it's captains up, and captains are out, and the coach calls the team up, the head coach. He gives a few words of advice and tries to get them going, and then you're out there again, and it happens like that.
Well, and so you speak about procedures, man, and I've always been very, very, very interested in this situation, right? Like, this is a forever changing world, especially sports nowadays, mm-hmm. right? And going back to the first procedure you spoke of about how to, in certain ways, like basically discipline players and kids and turn them in from kids when they show up to young men to grown men, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that takes a lot of preparation. It takes a lot of understanding how to be accountable. Well,
Yeah.
a lot of today's culture doesn't make you have to be accountable.
Right.
Honestly, for anything.
Correct. Now, here's another thing. So during the off season, you have 8 hours out of every week to work with the team. Y'all had it in baseball. We had it in football. So when you're practicing 4 hours a week, they're with the coaches that recruited them and the coaches that are coaching them at their position, and they're not in the weight room where that development takes place.
Right.
Where the discipline and toe the line and put your toes behind the line, hands behind the line, take the earrings out, all of that type of stuff. So, because believe it or not, football coaches, they make rules, but they're not good at enforcing those rules, and they pass it down to other people in the academic department, in the training room.
Understandably, because they're trying to teach you X and O's.
Exactly. And they're recruiting.
Right.
So there's a lot going on in that. So you are correct. So when the problem is exposed, when the issue is exposed, you got to collect the evidence, okay, through countless hours of film study. You got to look at the data, all right, and make sure that it's all aligned with your beliefs. And you got to make sure that you're not jumping to conclusions.
Yep.
Because of the 5 different reasons, technical, tactical, perceptual, you may just be asking a guy to do something he's cognitively unable to do.
Yeah.
He just can't do that. So you got to simplify that sometimes. You put all this together, and this all has to take place Saturday night, Sunday, and Monday. Okay,
Right,
so
right.
you've got less than 72 hours to get all this done. And then you hopefully present that to an expert. Okay? A guy like Coach Pete Jenkins.
Right.
You call up your mentor.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah. You call up your mentor, you send him. That's what I do for college coaches and high school coaches in addition to the Moffitt Method. I do this all the time. They send it to me. I look through it and give my opinion on what I think the problem is. And then you have to mount a unified front as a staff. There can only be one voice. And that's where things in situations and times like this, that's where it goes south.
Kind of like
Because-
2020, 2021 a little bit.
Yeah,
maybe.
in whatever year. I mean, usually,
I'm just going, yeah.
Yeah, usually it goes south because there's not a unified front.
Yep.
Right.
You have this coach who's upset because coach doesn't like what he's doing. You have this coach over here who thinks that guy's not a good coach. And, you have all these personalities involved. And instead of there being one voice, it's fractured.
Yeah.
And it's got to be a unified front. And so then once you've got that unified front, you've double, triple checked all the data, then on Monday afternoon or Monday morning, whenever you practice for the first time, you present the data to the team. You say, here's our problem. And you show them through the data. You put film up there, you show them where it's at. And then you present the solution. And then it's the coach's response, and that's in the team meeting.
Right.
And then it's the coach's responsibility when you break out, and it could just be one position or it's systemic throughout the entire team. And there's different situations, Obviously, the LSU offense is doing well. So it's not, I don't think, a systemic problem, and it could be based on one position or 2 positions or whatever the case may be. So then the assistant coaches go to their position groups, and they're selling it. And if you have an assistant coach going in there and he's smacking his lips, you're fractured.
Yeah.
And it's going down.
Yep. Because the players can see that. They feed
you
off
better
of that
believe it.
negativity.
All right. So in today's world, the players are better at reading body language and reading the coach.
Yep.
When you walk in, y'all have been in athletics enough, when your manager or your coach or the hitting coach or the pitching coach, whoever you're working with on a daily basis, you know when your position coach is not dialed in. You can tell by his body language and how he talks.
Yeah.
No doubt. No doubt. So in your experiences, right, you've gone through this. I'm sure you've been through these situations.
Yeah.
Mid-season. This is going on mid-season. We had this idea of what we were going to be as a team preseason. First game happens. All right, not really what we anticipated. We're going to go make some adjustments the next couple weeks. Next couple weeks, you play a little bit better. Competition's not as great as the first game. Then all of a sudden, you go and you play a team that has some weaknesses that you felt like you had a strength, which is the defensive line, their offensive line not good, your defensive line good. You feel like, oh, we're going to be able to exploit that. And in reality, it does not happen. And you give up 700-plus yards of offense. You get 55 points. You lose a game that you probably felt like you probably should have won, right? That's game 5. Mid-season, it's hard to go through the whole thing, right? So how do you fix it, but how do you mend it, manage it?
Again, that's why you got to have a unified front.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to somebody today. If you're going to turn a team around mid-season.
That's probably the better
all right,
question.
Yeah, there's 3 things, all right, you got to look at. Number 1, and you got to say to yourself and to the staff, in order for us to turn this team around, we have to start doing this. And it might be 1 or 2 things.
Hopefully it's not this.
Yeah.
Or it's not turning around.
No.
It's not going to turn around.
And then the next one is, for us to turn this team around, we have to stop doing this. And then the last one, for us to turn this team around mid-season, we must continue to do this. And you take those 3 things and you drive it home. So as a strength staff, we would say we're going to plow right through this. And then when we come out the other side, hopefully we're on the winning side of it.
Right.
And you just, like for us, like our end season was summer training. And then nowadays you're throwing all these recruiting visits that are, that pop in. And so we had so many recruits, now in May, that they were bringing them in, and then one day they had these guys walk through, and when they left, I asked one of the guys, I said, who was that? And they were, we don't know, they just showed up. I was like, what? I said, you brought these guys that you don't know who they are, and our team is training, and I just spent 30 minutes talking to them? Are you kidding? So we broke it down. There was apps, all right, apps and drinks, and then a meal with dessert. That's how. So they'd come in, they said, Coach, give them the apps, and so, we're eating some finger food, it's quick and they're out, see you. All right. So, and then you have camps that are coming, and we're training our team to play for the season. So the coaches, my assistants would come to me and say, Coach, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? How are we going to do this? I said, guys, we're going to plow right through it. That's all we can do. Just, we got our systems in place. When this happens, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing that. Let's plow right through it. High five each other, drink another cup of coffee, whatever kind of energy drink you got to have, my high, and let's go. So it's tough.
So and I'm going to say this without you've been in it, you've coached college football. You don't know what's going on. You're not in the locker room. You're not in the weight room. You don't see this, but you're watching it as a fan on TV right now, right? Just like we are.
Huge fan.
Right? Just like us. And so you're watching it and you're seeing it. So those 3 things. We need to keep doing this. We need to start doing this. We need to stop doing this. And we need to keep doing this. Those 3 things that you just mentioned. Looking at it from afar, what are those 3 things moving forward? From afar, it doesn't have to be in depth, you know what I mean?
Well, all right. So I think some of it, and all right, so your mistakes are technical, tactical, perceptual, physical.
Right.
And then effort.
Effort.
So I think, effort, all right, so for instance, nowadays they can tell who's looking at film, how, because it's all on your iPad.
How hard you're running.
Yeah, everything. Every time, when I was there, we tracked everything. Every time they wiggled, we tracked it. I'm not kidding. We tracked everything.
Hey, what's you doing at 2:30 in the morning?
No,
I told you to get this.
I was just joking.
I tried that. I tried that too. But, so, like polar watches, like smartwatches.
Yeah.
I tried. So I think it's a combination of those 5 things.
Yeah.
Obviously, technique, so even when I was the head strength coach, when I was at the games, like I watched the offensive line. Like I never watched, I'm sorry. You
don't have to be sorry to me because I don't think you understand how many times I've told people, hey, rewind that. See that guy in the purple jacket on the sideline? Watch him right now. Don't watch the play. Watch him.
So,
I knew what you were looking at.
I was a fan, man. Like, I was down there. My number one, the only thing I cared about was making sure we didn't get a penalty for somebody going on the field. Right. Or really, it wasn't stepping on the field. The only time you ever got a penalty is when the official ran into somebody on the sideline. Right. That white area, the officials area. You have the officials area, you have the coach's box, then you have the player's box. So that was my number one thing right there, is to make sure
Game day.
Yeah. And then during the game, I was just watching to see who pancaked somebody. And then I watched the offensive line. I played it, I coached it, and I love it. So I watched the offensive line. I didn't pay any attention to anything else. And when I watch the games now, I'm looking at Will Campbell and Emery and Charles Turner and unfortunately, I don't even know the other 2 guys' names. That's how much attention. Frazier, and then
Dellinger.
Dellinger. Oh, yeah.
You should know him.
Yeah. Sorry. Good dude. Good dude.
Elder statesman.
But, the first game, watching Charles, because Charles plays the game a lot like I played the game. So I like watching Charles play the game. So I can't say a lot about where the issues are, but obviously some of them, or they wouldn't be bringing Coach Jenkins in if they didn't think technical and tactical.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've heard people complain about the defensive line being too far off the ball. I've heard, that Harold's not in the right position, and all this stuff. And a lot of those people have no clue about what's going on in the game.
Frankly, have zero clue what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. So when I worked there, I would come home and Jill would approach me about something that she saw on Twitter. And I would say, no, what? No, but it's all over Twitter. I said, honey, no, nothing like that happened today. Nothing like that's going to happen. That's false. I don't know where that came from. It's fake news. So no, nothing like that happened. But so obviously technical. Obviously there are some tactical things. The perception thing, you can't really do a lot about that and there's a product called S2 Cognition, and I know LSU uses it because we're the one that helped the company. We were their beta subjects years ago. That's what I think Jack does a lot of that stuff now. And then Jack does the stuff with the eyes. So all that stuff is going on. And then the physical, if a guy can't bend, he can't play in the secondary. If he's not fast, he can't play in the secondary. If guys aren't powerful enough, they can't play them in the front 7.
Right.
That's just the way it is. So I don't think what I've watched, I think it's probably the first 3 issues, technical, tactical, and perceptual. They just don't see what's going on.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan.
And like you
Right.
said earlier, when that's something like that happens, when it perceptually, if they're not getting where it's going, you got to simplify it, right? So maybe that could
Many
be
times, yeah.
that could be a situation where they come in and Pete
Yeah.
comes in on the defensive line and says, "Hey, listen, we're going to tweak these. Y'all are athletic enough. Y'all are physical enough. Y'all are talented enough.
Yeah, those guys they have on the defensive line. are
Unbelievable.
monsters.
Yeah. And
They're
so, hey,
monsters.
let's tweak a few things. I mean, because, like, the only way I can relate to, I did play football my whole life until I got to high school. I mean, college, right?
Freak show.
Thank you. People don't think I know football,
Oh,
but
wait. The founder of S2 Cognition is a former STM quarterback, Brandon Alley.
oh, really?
Yeah, he went to Tennessee to run track.
I knew that, actually. I did know that. I think we
Yeah.
talked about that.
Speaking of STM quarterbacks,
There you go.
Shout
There you go.
out
Shout
S2 and STM.
Love
and
that.
Brandon Alley.
Love that.
And, yeah.
But,
Anyway.
so for me, like as a baseball player, right, or as
Yeah.
I can be in a 0 for 35 slump, right, and I'm talented enough, right, but I'm not doing anything. Perceptually I know what's going on, but the game's starting to speed up because now I'm trying to overcompensate something's off, right? You get in the cage, and all of a sudden one day you get a hitting coach that comes in, maybe a roving guy or someone. He comes
Expert.
in. And you hadn't been around him, he hadn't been around you, and he sees something and says, hey, that looks way different than what I saw 3 months ago. You go look on film, you see what you're doing, you make that one tweak, and all of a sudden you get the feeling of like, oh, there it is. Like, that's what I'm looking for, and all of a sudden you take off. I feel like it's similar in a sense in football, and obviously not one pitch, but, oh, this is it, and the guy feels like feels the technique or feels what he's trying to do, and he's like, oh, okay.
Figured it out,
And then
yeah.
now he's got more confidence, and now the perceptual stuff gets better because he has more confidence in where he's supposed to go, right? The tactical stuff's better because that's what he tweaked, and all of a sudden now it's like a whole different player. I don't know if that's a thing that happens in
No,
football.
it can, and that's why they brought in Coach Jenkins, for
Yeah.
instance. So 35 years ago, when I started coaching at John Curtis, Coach Jenkins was the defensive line coach at LSU 35 years ago. And the way he taught defensive line play, because it was built on progressions, okay? The basis of my strength and conditioning program, I learned it from Coach Jenkins because he teaches progressions. He takes difficult techniques that a defensive lineman uses during the game, and he breaks it down into different parts, and you practice those parts repetitively over and over again till they become second nature, and then you go to the next progression and you practice it over and over and over until that becomes second nature. And you keep doing that, and you build layer upon layer, and you do it right so many times that you can't do it wrong. And that's why I don't like the practice that you have. It all goes back to that.
So it's so funny you bring this up, and this is why I don't think people understand. Like, this is why coaching at this level gets the attention that it gets, the money is paid that it's paid, because a lot of these guys all know what they're talking about. But so, like we talked about earlier, like not knowing the practice time and how much time they spend practicing and how much time they spend tagging off, right? So when you watch that on TV and you watch a guy pull up when he sees another teammate on him, and next thing you know, that tackle's broken, and then now you're not in position to be in the play, right? And people don't understand, like, we even talked about it. We're like, man, it just looks like bad effort.
Yeah.
And it may not be bad effort. It
Right.
may be something that's so second nature that they're so used to seeing a guy tag off because they've done it so much over and over and over again that you pull up, and the change is now, hey, I'm not going to talk to you so much about effort. Hey, I'm not going to talk to you so much about form. I need you to understand we are no longer on the practice field. Yeah. I need you to understand there's 100,000 people in here, and this thing is live until y'all are on the ground. Yeah. And making someone and helping someone to understand that is where the difference in coaching is in this situation. It's so crazy, like, understanding and seeing that, because you see it from the TV as a spectator, not in it, not around it every day, and it is perceptual as something else. And then a little bit more of an insight shows you like, all right. I mean, you've done the same thing. You've done the same thing as a hitter. Like you talked about, you get in there and you realize, I look good off of BP. And the next thing you know, 97 blows by. You're like, bro, this ain't the same shit.
Yeah,
this is a little different.
This is what I've been trying to fix.
This is a little different. No, I can't do that.
Were you on the team where we went and we were going to have a home run derby or play a softball game one time? It was somebody that was a real good baseball player. They could not hit a softball.
It's the worst thing.
So I was about to say, like, you're asking me that. I'm not sure, but I've been around 5 different football teams that have tried to do it, and it is the funniest thing ever.
Yeah, you can't hit it. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't hit it, and that's because you haven't done it. And if you're a baseball player and now you're trying to hit a softball,
different.
It's different because you've swung the bat so many times that it's ingrained in your central nervous system, and it's second nature. So then when a ball comes at you and it's at a lower trajectory, instead of it coming down on you, it's coming up at you, and it's at a shorter distance, softer. You can't hit it. Yeah, it's softer. You can't hit it.
Yep.
No doubt.
Bat's lighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got a question?
Yeah, I do. Obviously, you talked a lot about what's happening with it feels like on the defensive line. I have 2 questions for you. One of which is, how big of an impact is it whenever you lose a coach like a defensive line coach, like what obviously would happen with Jimmy Lindsey? Unfortunate situation. And for them to address it, like, I guess middle of the season, you want it to happen earlier, but how does that impact the defensive line when you don't have that voice in the room every single day?
Well, so, all right. I don't know how it's going to work because of the language, all right? So, for instance, we had a similar situation in 2020 when James Craig left. Mm-hmm. So we're doing all these practices, okay?
One way.
Yeah, we're doing, and it all goes, like, I'm not a fan of all these panty practices, right? I'm not. I'm just putting it that way. I mean, you're out there in tights and dry fit shirt, and you know, you got your jewelry on, you got a watch on.
The truth about it is, the best teams that are like really good on defense, they're the nasty ones in these panty.
Yeah. All right. So, all right. While you were talking about tagging off, 2019, Patrick Queen, he wasn't tagging off on nobody.
He told the story.
Not even Joe.
Yeah, he told the story. Him and Joe got in a fight.
Oh. I was there.
Yeah.
And not just like those guys fought all day long.
Right.
I mean, every day. All right, so LaRon Landry.
Never, ever.
Our receivers, if LaRon was covering you, our receivers would drop the ball on purpose. Jimbo would go nuts. Because they knew in the back of their mind, if they caught a ball on LaRon, he was going to bury them the next time. Like
No, LaRon would go through practice, and there would be
Body
overthrown balls that passed between LaRon and you would look up, and he's not even looking at the ball. He's literally staring through you, trying to run through you. I'm like, bro, you could have caught that and went to the house with it. You're too worried about knocking my head off right now.
So that's a different thing. So Patrick was on here. He was on here.
Yeah. Last year, he told us a story.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they fought that entire practice. Yeah.
Well,
they fought all day long.
And they've been very vocal about that on Twitter because it came out after LSU before the year, got into a bit of a skirmish, and it came out that it was, they wanted it dead. They don't want that kind of thing going on at practice. And everybody on the 2019 team hopped on social media. Like, we did this every day. Yeah. This was kind of the tone that we set early on.
They were mean and nasty. All right, so back to your question. So when James Craig left and Brad Davis came in, Brad spent the entire month of July instead of us. So if you looked at the GPS reports, and this is no knock on Brad or the situation, it was just
the hand that you were dealt.
We were dealt. But if you looked at the GPS report, everybody else's velocities and workloads are up here, and the offensive line's workloads are down here because they're walking through stuff, and it's a different language. And so there are a lot of barriers that and Coach Jenkins is a pro. I mean, You have coaches and players, and then you have pros. All right? Coach Jenkins is a pro. And so if anybody can do it, it will be him.
Quickly.
Yeah, if anybody can do it, it will be him.
Now, you gave the example of offensive line and defensive line, right? Now, they're obviously the big dudes on the team, and they're, but offensive line operates a little bit differently than defensive line, right? It's taught differently. They have different thought
they have
processes.
their back to the ball, too.
Exactly.
It's the only position on the team where you play the whole game with your back to the
Right.
ball. So that's different.
Right. So I guess my question would be the midseason change with the coach and the offensive line, is it a harder adjustment for the offensive line than it would be for the defensive line based off of back to the ball, based off of knowing blocking assignments, knowing how to blitz pick up?
I think it's probably harder for the offensive line
Yeah.
for everyone. And then I think it's probably harder for the coach if it's the defensive line.
Okay.
Because and there, you have your alignment, you got to get that right first, based on the formation and what the defensive play is, you got to get lined up in the right gap, and that's across the board. All 11 players got to be lined up right. And then they start motioning, and then the secondary's got to slide, guys come up on the line of scrimmage, guys back off the line of scrimmage. So there's a lot of that movement going on, but you're still saying sick 'em. When the ball turns over.
Yeah.
So you got to make sure you get lined up right first, and then it boils down to fundamentals.
Right.
Yeah.
If I'm a defensive lineman and the guy goes that way, I got to step down inside, and I'm either going to get hit in the ear with a trap, or the play's going offside, or I'm going to get hit right here. So there's not a lot of variables, for a defensive lineman. And I'm going to put that in quotation marks, but there are. But
Right. No, I get what you're saying.
But
you had a second.
but like you're saying, with a new voice comes a new way, maybe new terminology and new ways of saying stuff. And at the college level, and even at the higher level, obviously, there is so much that can go wrong, and you could so easily be beat just by not being lined up correctly.
oh, absolutely.
Like just
Touchdown.
literally by it's
Touchdown.
and by lined up not correctly, that doesn't necessarily mean not having your hand in the dirt. Like from the TV, people watching and say, "Oh, they were lined up, they were ready to go," and you could literally be shaded in the wrong hole.
Yep,
and you'll
exactly.
never know that watching from TV because you don't know what the defensive
All right.
call is.
So if I'm a defender, if I'm standing up, if I'm a safety or a nickel or a dime or a corner, and if I'm lined up 6 inches too deep and I don't have the right foot placement, it's over. Mm-hmm. Because the quarterback sees that.
Shaded to the wrong side.
Yeah.
It's over.
The quarterback sees that. All right. So, and that's why Joe and those guys were so good. Joe sees that. Peyton saw that.
Right.
And our quarterback here, he sees that.
No doubt. Lloyd, you had another question, I think.
This is just going off of the defensive line again. And it goes off of, obviously you saw Mason Smith go down with the knee injury, was it 2 years ago? Or
Last year.
Last year. The first game of the year against Florida State, he goes down with an ACL. Then you see him try to rehab it and come back this year, and it ends up with a high ankle sprain. I just wanted your opinion on how those two things are probably correlated.
Devastating.
Because
Is it the same leg?
Is it the same leg?
I don't know.
That I
Might
don't
be
know.
worse if it's opposite.
Yeah, that makes it tough.
You're compensating on both sides.
So, theoretically, tissue. So the key to a successful ACL reconstruction is that the tissue, the donor tissue, whether it's your hamstring or your patella or a cadaver, is that it becomes vascularized, okay, that there's blood flow to it. If there's no blood flow to it, then
It's dead cartilage.
or dead ligament.
Yeah.
So what they do is they take a tendon and then they put it where a ligament was, and then the hopes are it becomes vascularized and turns into a ligament. So if
Yeah. It's crazy.
yeah. So that right there in and of itself is
Step one.
that has to happen. And there's no way of telling if that took without going in and looking at it. And you don't want to do that. Like Dr. James Andrews says, every time, and he's real country, I don't know if y'all have ever talked to Dr. Andrews, but he goes, every time air gets in that knee, it gets a little weaker. So you don't want to open it up to go in there and see. And you can do the pivot shift and the Lockman test. You can do all those to see if it took. But you don't know. But you've got to start rehabbing.
Right.
Because you have a timetable. So whether or not it's vascularized, and all 5 of us in here are going to heal at different rates because of genetics and nutrition and rest and all this other stuff. So you're on a timetable, so you got to start rehabbing. And it's kind of a toss up, It really is. Yeah. And so then if anything happens every time somebody swells up and it has to be drained, or every time somebody gets patella tendonitis, and that's why a lot of surgeons went from using a patella tendon graft to a hamstring graft or some other type of allograft, is because of patella tendonitis. You'll get hamstring tendonitis. You'll pull your hamstring. Every time something happens, it slows that process down. And, you just never know if it's correlated or not.
Yeah.
You just don't know. It's hard to tell without the data, and they've got force plates over there. They got Nord boards. They got everything that we had. So you can look at the data. When you jump on the force plate, you'll see asymmetries. You'll see landing asymmetries. So when you land on the force plate, you can see things that pop up, whether it's eccentric, concentric, or landing. There are things that will show up that could point to an asymmetry, and then you have to investigate that. And so there's one thing, and then there's 1,000 others that could have caused it. So it's hard to say if it's a correlation or not.
I said in our text message when I asked you to come on the show that I wouldn't keep you too long, but we've gone a little long, but it's okay. I think you're enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. I'm not going to keep you too much longer.
All right, let me ask y'all this.
Yeah.
So how long of a podcast is this?
So our show's it's a live YouTube show. It's from 6 to 8 p.m.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So Monday, Wednesday, 6 to 8, 2 hours. So we're good. I'm going to ask you one more.
Hey, listen, my schedule's wild.
All the time, huh? So I got another question, one more question, and then we can, shoot the shit a little bit before you go. But I don't think people realize what goes into travel and, some of these types of games, right? So, for instance, you have 2 consecutive road games. One, a night game on the road. It's an SEC game. It's intense. You're going there. You're playing. Look, we looked at the stats. The defense was on the field for 88 plays.
Ooh.
Against Ole Miss.
What did I say? What did I say when you said that?
65 is like what? No, yeah, you said ooh, same thing. 88. That's a lot of plays. That doesn't happen, right? So you go from a game like that to now we got to rebound. We got to figure out some of these adjustments that we have to do. To we're going to Columbia, Missouri on the road at 11 a.m.
Yeah.
Right. That's something that, one, you got to train for, right? The strength coach and the team has to be ready for it. The nutritionists have to be ready for it. But you don't train for that the week of or the week before. You train for that weeks ahead of time. What goes into that preparation on these types of road trips?
So that, for me as a coach, and here's where it became a problem. I'm looking for something on sleep so excuse me for being on my cell phone.
No, you're fine. I like this.
I got something on sleep, if I can find it. But when I was at Miami, our closest away game was Blacksburg, Virginia.
Jesus.
Okay?
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
You're 5 hours. You're 6 hours just from the top of Florida.
Yeah. So that was our closest away game. So, and Coach Davis, Butch Davis was the head football coach. So Coach Davis used the NFL model. So the players had practice on Sunday.
Oh, wow.
So we would get back, and I lived in the boonies.
Right.
I lived in unincorporated Dade County. So we would, I lived out there where all the farms were, the Crone Detention Center. I lived so far in the back. In fact, the end of my road turned into a desert. Like it was like it was coral. So you'd go at the end of the road. I lived on 152nd, and it dead ended into an area that had been drained, and there were lumps of coral out there. So it used to be a long time ago. It was underwater, a millennial ago.
Welcome to Miami, baby.
Yeah, welcome to Miami. So that's how far I lived. So the sun would be coming up by the time I got home. And I would go in the house, I'd shower, eat breakfast, I'd lay down, and Clay would go, Daddy. And I was back up again. And then we had to be at the facility around 3 o'clock or something like that.
Wow.
So I hated that. Sleep. So somebody asked me today, said, Coach, as far as recovery from work, what is the best thing that football players can do for recovery? I said, sleep. It's the number one thing. It's the number one thing that you do. And what I used to tell these guys is, especially during training camp, but throughout the entire process, eat when you can, sleep when you can. And then when you have to, go to class, go to practice, go to workout. That's how serious sleep is. All right, so I've got this chart here.
Jared took that to heart, by the way.
No, I did. No, for real. Like, it's so funny.
He can sleep anywhere.
So, like, football has always been kind of cutting edge and, like, some of the leaders when it comes to, like, understanding where the body is and stuff. Like, I know Major League Baseball is about as far behind all of it as it gets. And so we used to be so serious about that. Like, we go, especially in camp. It started in camp. You show up, we do everything we did, and you would have lunch and all these dinners, and even after dinners, before dinner that would be the end. But lunch, it was literally like dudes were shoveling food to go take a nap, to be able to come back, to be able to have the strength you need to go through practice. So I do all that, and I get used to doing it.
That's where it came from, yeah.
Bro, and I get to pro ball, and it was like, they're like, sleep. What sleep? Don't do that. I'm like, y'all are crazy. I'm gonna take a nap.
We'd be training before the season started in Tampa, and we'd have to be conditioning in the morning, weights in the afternoon. Right, and me and Jared were roommates, and we had like suite mates. So it was me and Jared, and then our suite mates were Todd Frazier and Ryan Flaherty. Both were in the big leagues, and we're sitting there, and me and Jared would finish the morning workout. We have our shakes, and I'm laying down in bed. I'm talking to him. We're in mid conversation. I'm talking about. I asked him a question. 10 seconds in, gone. No response. Like, bro, I was literally 10 seconds ago you were talking to me, now you're not.
Hey, bro, we got another workout, bro. Leave me alone.
Yeah, leave it alone. Don't talk to me.
Yeah.
I'm recovering.
He's out.
So
recovering.
I've got this chart here. It says hours of night and levels of preparedness. So 4.5 hours below is dangerous.
Oh, no.
5 hours of sleep is harmful. 5.5 is awful. 6 is bad, 6.5 not enough, 7 is good, 8 is great, 9 is elite. And so and it's broken down. If bedtime, if I got to wake up at 6 a.m. to be great or to be elite, I got to be in bed at 9 o'clock. That means knocked out. It's called sleep hygiene.
Yeah.
Okay? And that is something that you got to preach all the time. All right, it's more important because you don't get bigger, faster, stronger while you train. You get bigger, faster, stronger while you sleep. So that's the number one issue. So when you travel now, and I know they'll leave because, everything's on the clock. So normally, like, it would be wheels up at like 2 p.m. for a night game. For me, if we had an 11 o'clock kickoff, it's going to be wheels up at 10 o'clock in the morning. Like, you're going to do a little walkthrough, eat on the plane, serve another meal, wheels up, land, go straight to the hotel, and start getting to sleep.
Yeah.
Like, start resting. Now, a hard-headed coach is going to have meetings until 10 o'clock at night. All right? But then you got to be up, like, and the game's at 11.
11 a.m.
All right, so you got to eat 4 hours before kickoff. Yeah. So you got to be, so those guys are getting out of bed at 7 o'clock in the morning. How many college
Probably
students do you
earlier
know?
than that, right? Before it's like, because 7's 4 hours before that's when they want to
Yeah,
eat,
well,
right?
they're getting up and going straight to the cafeteria to eat.
Yeah.
And then you have meetings. So they're getting up at 7 because you want them to get every minute of sleep you can. So you get them up, you go straight to the cafeteria, you eat your pregame or to the wherever you cafeteria meeting room. You go in there and eat, and then you go straight to meetings and you meet, and then you get on the bus and you go to the stadium. You leave. Well, you arrive at the stadium 2 hours before kickoff. So you're arriving at the stadium if it's an 11 o'clock
9
kickoff.
o'clock.
You're getting there at 9 o'clock in the morning. Some of these guys ain't even got out of bed on a regular weekday. They're not out of bed at 9 o'clock in the
4
morning.
out of
Some
5 days a week, they're probably not out of bed
Yeah.
at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Or they got up and did what they had to do and then went right back to bed.
Right.
You know, because, you know, you got to weigh in, you got to
Yeah.
do all that other stuff. But so sleep is the most important thing. And again, I learned this from when I was at Miami because our travel was so bad. And then once we got force plates, I started looking, and 2 road games in a row in the SEC to me was the worst possible thing. So I started prepping for that 3 weeks out for the 2 weeks.
And how
in
did
a
you do
row.
that?
By reducing the volume. First, going to the coach. You know, a lot of times you get cussed out and all that. Sometimes you just got to get cussed out, you know. And you go talk to the coach. You say, Coach, you know, we got 2 road games coming up. There's a chance that it's going to be an early morning, you know, kickoff, you know, 11 o'clock kickoff. You know, we got to start cutting back in preparation for this. Because if you don't,
Yeah.
then
And they announced the game times 2 weeks in advance.
Right.
So you got to start prepping for it as soon as you can. So you reduce the load in the weight room. You try to reduce the load at practice. But here's the thing. When you're not playing good, how do you reduce the load at
Right.
practice? Yep. So you have one choice. You squeeze the game plan. You know, you simplify the game plan. You got technical, tactical, perceptual. You have those 3 things where stuff goes wrong. So you try to make it easier. You shrink the game plan. You don't want them to do as much so that you're not on the field prepping. Because, you know, my deal was if you're not going to use it in the game, why don't you practice all this stuff,
Right.
you know? And coaches don't do a lot of this anymore, but, you know, I've been around head coaches where you'd have 10-minute goal line periods, you know, and goal line scrimmages and all that. And you might only be on the goal. You might run 3 goal line plays a game.
Right.
You know, why spend 10 minutes practicing goal line short yardage when you can be doing something else? You're only going to run 3 plays in the game, you know. So, yeah, it's tough. And, you know, but I believe in the Tigers. I
There you
really
go.
do.
Me too.
I believe in the Tigers.
I still think they can win 10 games this
Yeah.
year. I really do. I think
Well, that's the good thing about especially the West this year and the East. It appears that Georgia is vulnerable. Tennessee is. Kentucky's 5-0.
yeah, they're probably playing the best out of any of the teams right there in the East right now. I would imagine.
We're about to find out a lot about it.
Yeah, they're
this
playing.
week.
They're
Playing each
playing
other.
Georgia this
Yeah.
weekend, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, and so the point you just made is something. So, one of my assistant coaches, Jeremy, is at Duke now. So when he left LSU, he went to Duke, and he called me last Sunday, and we were talking about the Notre Dame game.
Yeah.
And he was like, you know, it's a huge game. Da, 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 da. I said, yeah. I said, win or lose, though, you find out a lot about who you are. And, you know, and they played Notre Dame down to the
they
last
did.
minute. So now the quarterback got hurt.
Yeah.
But you find out a lot about yourself, you know, and that's this week. We're going to find out a lot about some of these
LSU.
teams
No
and
doubt.
what they're really made of, what kind of metal they have. And, you know, so here's the amazing thing. I guess this was in 2001. I've been hitting the head a few times. When we beat Tennessee
2001.
here, 2001, took Tennessee down to the wire. Robert Royal catches a big pass in the end zone. Damian James had that huge play in the end zone against them. But the week before, we lost to UAB or somebody.
UAB.
It was UAB.
Was it UAB? We lost to UAB one week and then turn around the next week and beat a top 3 team in the country.
Hey, you're saying that? I talked about it all week last week. I said, you're crazy if you think that Ole Miss team that went up to Alabama last week and got kicked around and put up the lowest points they've ever under Lane Kiffin is going to show up back home and not play well, right? I was like, I thought going into last week, I was like, it's so critical for them to show up because I promise you, if they came out of that game healthy, they are by far going to get Ole Miss's best effort.
Yeah.
Because that last week was what is LSU this week. Like, that 2-game stretch was going to tell them a lot about who they were.
And that's the way the SEC is. Like, you're going to get especially if you're playing at LSU because of the success that we've had, you know, the uniform, the stadium, the band, the fans, the whole 9. It brings out the very best in your opponents. Mm-hmm. Like, and you know, you take any team in the Southeastern Conference, well, almost any team, but
Most teams.
Yeah. Keep it nice. All right? you can go just about anywhere in the country and compete in any conference if you're from the SEC.
Yep.
And it starts in high school.
Yep.
You know, it's just different down here. And those players are on every roster in our conference. And you're going to get their very best effort. You're going to tactically, from the opposing coaches, you're going to get their very best effort. Because the majority of the coaches in the SEC wish they coached at LSU.
Right.
You know, if they're not coaching at Alabama or Georgia, they want to be at LSU. Mm-hmm. Okay? Same thing with the best players in our conference. If they're not playing for Alabama, LSU or Georgia, they're pissed off.
But even still, and then when you play those teams, they're like, this is who I wanted to measure myself against.
Exactly.
So you're going to get all the best efforts right there.
Every time. Mm-hmm. Every time. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting weekend. I believe in the Tigers.
Last 11 a.m. game they had, Mississippi State on the road, they played flawless. It was the best game. Honestly, that was probably the best game they've played from top to bottom all year. So hopefully they do something similar. I think the quarterback and the offense they have at Missouri is a little bit better than Mississippi State, actually a lot better than Mississippi State. But, you know, they obviously have a chip on their shoulder. They just got their teeth kicked in.
And here's another thing. Blake Baker is the defensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
He was our linebacker coach in 2020. It got let go.
Yeah.
So,
and a lot of people thought he should have gotten the defensive coordinator job at LSU.
Yeah.
His name was one of the last ones that was on the block.
Yeah.
And he's a Louisiana guy.
You don't think he's coming in with a rock in his shoe?
No doubt. Right. No doubt. I mean, he wants to make a point, right? And I get that. And they should. Look, I know, and that's football. That's motivation everywhere. That's how it's supposed to be, right?
I mean, look, dude, like, hockey's a different beast. Basketball in the paint, maybe not so much.
Not as much anymore.
Different beast. This is the one game where, like, I can literally physically impose my will, and that doesn't take any extra bit of talent, finesse, skill. Am I going to be pissed off enough to just say I'm just not going to get pushed around by you today?
Yeah.
That can change. From
no
week
doubt.
to
It's
week,
a mind,
play to play.
100%.
Like that.
Yeah.
100%.
So this is a game like all right, so I laughed. You were talking about it earlier about, you know, them changing their attitude. If anybody can do that, it would be Coach Jenkins. Mm-hmm. Because he's going to wake up Saturday morning and he's going to have a rock in his shoe. You know, purposely slam his hand in the bathroom door in the hotel room, you know. Something like that, you know.
Got to get that chip somewhere.
Kick the wall.
You got to manufacture some anger. If you have any hate in your heart, you got to let it out. You know?
I love that.
I love it.
Oh, Coach, I appreciate you as always.
Yeah.
I mean, we can sit here and talk all night.
Yeah.
I would love to do that. We'll have you back on. We'll have you back on throughout the course of the year. We'll keep talking about it. especially in 3 weeks whenever they've had the improvement, and we can go say, hey, tactically, whatever, technical, perceptual, effort, physical, all of it. We'll go back and regroup.
Yeah, and do me a favor and talk to Anthony about maybe me doing my podcast.
No doubt.
Yeah.
We'll get that
Start
set
working
up
all
for
this
sure. I
together.
think he'd be happy with
Line it
that.
all together, baby.
No doubt. We can make it all happen.
This is fine.
I appreciate it. We're gonna let you go. We're not even gonna take a break. We're just gonna go a lot. We're just gonna keep going. So,
Okay. Good deal.
I appreciate it.
All right, man. Yeah.
Always
Good to
fun.
see you.
All right, guys. Y'all
All
take
right,
care.
take it
Thank you
easy.
very much.
Take it easy.